We all know the feeling of getting a message on Facebook. It's exhilarating. The suspense and the curiosity of what a total stranger had to say to you that he used up his time to text are amazing. Let me introduce myself. My name is Grace, a 26-year-old business consultant. I was truly successful in my career, making great progress at the company I was employed. Everyone loved me, not just for my quick wit and charming personality, but also for my amazing body. I loved to work out, and I did so 6 days a week. I was also very careful with my diet and didn't leave anything to chance. You could say that I had it all together. One evening, as I was scrolling through Facebook, I began getting notification after notification. Guys saw that I was online and they had all decided to message me. I mean, who wouldn't? Anyway, I was filtering through the message, but most of the guys used cheesy pickup lines and they also looked kind of creepy. But one of them stood out. His name was Tom, and he appeared to be quite attractive. I couldn't believe that I found a decent guy to talk to, and he didn't approach me with a worn-out line. Instead, he just introduced himself and complimented me. It was nice and innocent. He didn't raise any suspicions. We were both from the same city, and we started talking about different things. Soon we found out that we had a lot in common, and for the next couple of weeks, we talked almost every day. There was clearly a connection, but one day, things took a turn for the worse. Tom saw that I liked the photos of other guys on Facebook and even commented on some of them. He got really mad and started bombarding me with all kinds of messages. He was acting like a jealous boyfriend, even though all we did was text and didn't even see each other one time. He started calling me names and saying that I was cheating on him with those guys. He asked who they were and what business do they have with me. Being a laid-back chick and really liking Tom, I found everything funny and cute. Even though we were not together, I took it as a joke and didn't think much about it. But as the days went on, Tom became more and more insistent. He started texting me while I was at work, calling me in the middle of the night to see if I was alone. Text after text, I became more frustrated. So, one night at around 4 a.m., Tom called me a bunch of times until I woke up. He began screaming and asking me why I didn't respond to his messages. I finally had enough of his behavior and told him to leave me alone. The next thing I did was block him so he couldn't have any means of contacting me. The next couple of days were quiet. I didn't get a ton of texts, and I began to forget all about that crazy guy who thought that the two of us were in a relationship, or better yet, a virtual relationship. But that didn't discourage me from talking to other guys on Facebook and like other photos. Not long after, I found another man named Alex who seemed really nice. We really hit it off, and we were liking and commenting on each other's photos frequently. Finally, we decided to meet up, so we set up a date, a time, and decided on the place. We were supposed to meet the next evening at around 8 p.m. at a local Italian restaurant. I was so excited, and Alex was too. When the time came, I got there 10 minutes late because that's how a lady is supposed to arrive. Anyway, I got there, but I didn't see Alex, so I thought that he might have hit some traffic. I texted him and got a table. I waited almost 20 minutes, and he didn't show up. I texted him again and again with no response from him. I then thought I got stood up and just went home. Later that evening, I got a message from Alex. Finally, he texted me back, I said to myself. But upon opening and reading that message, I found out that it wasn't him. It was his sister on his Facebook page. She told me that Alex was found dead in his apartment that evening. He was getting ready to go out on our date, but she said that someone broke into his place and stabbed him several times. The person was caught on camera, but you couldn't make out his face. I was devastated and couldn't believe what was going on. The days passed, and I got over this horrible situation. After a couple of months, I started talking to another guy. He was a lawyer, and we liked all the same things. We decided to go on a date, and he, Jason, said that he will come over to my house and pick me up around 7 p.m. We were planning to go to a classy restaurant in a good part of town, and I was so excited. The time came, and there I was in my living room, waiting for Jason to show up. I waited and I waited, but he never arrived. I got very angry, and I tried to call him, but his phone was off. Why would he stand me up? Was it something I said? I asked myself. Anyway, it looked like it would be another night of me, alone, eating some pasta and watching TV. After I changed into my sweats, I turned on the TV and I stumbled upon some breaking news. A young man got into a car accident when another driver hit him front on. When the police got to the scene, the other driver was not in the car, and the officers are still looking for them. The young man that was driving on the right side of the road died instantly on impact. I froze. It was Jason, the guy I was supposed to go on a date that night with. Then I remembered right before our date, another guy was murdered in his own home. Did it have something to do with me? It was too much of a coincidence. That evening, as I was lying in bed thinking about everything that happened, I got a text from an unknown number. I reached for my phone and opened the text, and the next thing I knew was that it felt like I was about to faint. The text said, "See what you made me do? Now how about that date?" Attached to it were 2 pictures. It was that guy I had talked to a while ago who kept harassing me and got really jealous. That guy took 2 photos with the bodies of the 2 men he killed, smiling in each of them. I felt sick and I immediately called the police to turn him in. They quickly arrived and I gave them all the details I knew to that day. But they never found him, and I never dated anyone ever again. I'm a big fan of cars. I always wanted one ever since I was a little girl. While all my friends were into Barbies and dollhouses, I liked cars. My dad used to have an old BMW M Series that was really loud. I would love to sit in it in the driveway. Anyway, fast forward some years and there I was, 16 and with a driver's license. That old M Series was too powerful for me, so Dad bought me a Fiat 500. It was a small, girly car that I quickly fell in love with. Since I was passionate, I managed to make it my own. I customized the interior, amongst other things. And that car is still one that I have today. I'm now 21, but I wouldn't part ways with my car for $1 million. Being an old car, it breaks down, of course, so I had to find a mechanic, and after a quick Google search, I found one close to where I lived. I went with the car, and after finding the problem, he told me to come the next day when the part would be delivered. He asked for my phone number so that he could call me when it's ready. Later that evening, I got a text. It was from the mechanic. He told me that he would want to take me on a date tomorrow, after he fixes my car. I told him that I have a boyfriend, even though I didn't. The next day I went to the shop. After he told me that the part was there, but when I pulled up, he informed me that they screwed up the order and I'm gonna have to come back the next day. I went home and that evening, after watching a romantic comedy, decided to go on Facebook. I started liking some pictures and commenting on others, on different profiles of some guys I knew. But soon after that, I got a message. To my surprise, it was the mechanic. I was shocked when I read what he wrote to me. He called me names, saying that I'm a liar, amongst other things, and that I told him that I have a boyfriend even though I'm on Facebook, liking and commenting on photos of hot guys. He said that he will not fix my car and I deserve to get into a car crash. It was brutal, really brutal. So instead of replying, I decided to ignore him. The guy seemed to be crazy and I didn't want anything to do with that. Seeing that I'm online on Facebook, he sent me another message. And in this one, he said, "I'm sorry," and said that he will come over with a bottle of wine. He told me that he never wanted to call me those names and that we should start over. Upon reading that, I told him that he doesn't know where I live, and if he doesn't stop, I will call the police. But he just replied with a laughing emoji. The next thing I did was to block him. I really had it with these weird guys that think that they have the right to say anything to me. But about an hour later, my doorbell rang. I was stunned. I wasn't expecting anyone at that hour. I went to see who it was, and there he was, standing with a bottle of wine in his hand. It was that creepy mechanic that harassed me on Facebook. I didn't open the door and told him to go away or I'll call the cops. I started shaking now, not knowing what's going to happen next. I mean, who does this? Who comes to someone's house uninvited and also with a bottle of wine? He didn't reply, but I could see him walking away. I looked through the window until I couldn't see him anymore and went back to my couch. I felt a sense of relief. I thought I got rid of that guy. As I was scrolling through my phone, I got a message on Facebook. It was from another account that I didn't have any photos of or any activity. It said, "I hope you like red," followed by a smiling emoji. I couldn't connect the dots at first. What does this guy mean? I get tons of weird and sometimes nonsensical messages from guys on Facebook, so I just thought it was one of those times. But the next thing I heard really freaked me out. Remember, I was home alone. I heard something in the kitchen. It was the sound of a bottle being opened. I slowly got up from my couch and took baby steps toward the kitchen while I was simultaneously holding my breath. Finally, I got there so I could see what was going on. And there he was, the creepy mechanic. He managed to climb through my window, and he was pouring wine into 2 glasses. I screamed and I told him to get out, but he didn't even bother to turn around. Luckily, my neighbor saw him walking towards my backyard and decided to see if I was okay. He rang the doorbell and I let him in, telling him about the man in the kitchen. He went over there to get him out, but the guy acted like that he lived there. He said he was my boyfriend, even though I said he was lying. We then decided to call the police. When he saw me calling, he said there's no need to do that. He told me he would leave if I accepted to go out with him. At that moment, my neighbor took a few steps toward him. The mechanic put his hand on a knife that was on my table. I screamed and I told him once again to get out. I saw him raising the knife, and then he took a few steps toward my neighbor. My heart was beating out of my chest. I could see it now. He would kill both of us in cold blood. A million scenarios were going through my mind. But something happened that surprised me. The mechanic smiled and said, "You bad, bad girl. You need to be taught a lesson. I see that you already have someone that's willing to help you out. You know how to punish her? Do you?" He asked my neighbor while looking at him in the eyes. We were both speechless and didn't know what was going on. I suppose he didn't want a confrontation, so he left the knife on the table. With a deep breath, he took a last look at me with his hungry eyes checking me out from head to toe, and then he left. As he was going away, I told him that I know his auto repair shop, and I know who he is, so it wouldn't be hard for me to turn him in. He just said that he will see me around, and I never saw him from that day on. It was a frightening experience, even though nothing happened to me physically, but mentally, I was scarred for life.
The new year was always celebrated in my family as a time that we'd put all our mistakes behind us and start fresh without any regrets. Of course, that was the case until I was 17. I never really told anyone about what happened, so this is the first time people from outside my close-knit friend group would hear the story. Without wasting any time, let's go back to when I was 17. My name's Brian, and my best friends were Jackson and Liam. We've been close ever since we were babies, and our families were also friends. We lived close to each other, making it easier to spend a lot of our time together. At 16, we got our driver's license, and immediately after that, our parents bought each of us cars. I know, we were privileged, and maybe since our families had money, you would think much less of us. But remember, we were just kids, and what happened, well, it haunts us even to this day. "Hey man, finally I got my license. I thought I'm gonna fail again," Liam said as he came to us in the DMV parking lot with a wide grin on his face. Me and Jackson already got ours, but he failed a couple of times before he succeeded. "Yeah, dude, finally! That M3 was just sitting there in your garage," I told him before he agreed. His family had a lot of money, way more than mine or Jackson's, and while the two of us received normal, everyday cars, Liam was gifted something that he would never dream of. "Get ready, because tonight we're gonna tear up the streets," he said. Anyway, we went home. The day went on, and at exactly 8 p.m., I hear a car horn in the front of my house. I looked out the window, and there it was, Liam's M3 in that beautiful blue color. "Come on!" he yelled. I could spot Jackson in the back seat. I didn't know how to get out of the house quick enough. I grabbed my jacket since it was right after Christmas when this happened, and the weather was merciless. I hopped in the car and off we went. The small town in which we lived was kind of in the middle of nowhere. Liam stepped on the gas, and before I knew it, we were at the edge of town. No streetlights in sight. So even if we saw the road clearly, the area around us was engulfed with darkness. "You sure you should be driving so fast?" I said while holding on to the seat. "Don't worry, this thing has a million safety features on it. We're gonna be fine," Liam responded as he looked straight ahead. The good thing was that on that road, the traffic was always light, especially at night. And if we did manage to skid off the road, we would just stop in the field. No real danger crossed my mind. "Hey, let's stop here and celebrate," Liam said. He pulled over on the side of the road. It was pitch black around us. Jackson then got out of the car and popped the trunk. "Here, catch," he told me before throwing a can of beer. We hung out there for a while. I believe it was about an hour. After we finished 2 beers each, we went back home. "Let's see what she can really do," Liam told us. He pushed the gas and the car almost started flying. It was a sensation I'll never forget. But out of the blue, a loud thud followed by the sound of screeching tires. "What the hell was that?" I asked while turning my head toward Liam. He had both of his hands on the wheel. He didn't say anything, but he was breathing heavily. We were all quiet until the driver spoke. "I think I hit something." The 2 of us didn't say anything, still being in shock. But Jackson said after a couple of seconds, saying that it might just be a rabbit. He saw it crossing the road. Me and Liam weren't so sure. We kept driving. Upon arriving in his driveway, we saw that the front bumper was cracked. "Oh man, my dad's gonna kill me!" "It could have happened to anyone, relax," I said. Then, after about 10 minutes, we all went to our houses. Fast forward, and it was December 31st, New Year's Eve. We were all gathered at Liam's house, including our parents. The 3 of us went into his room to play some video games until 12 a.m. We were about 1 hour in when the console suddenly turned off. Liam got up to go see what happened to it. As he approached it, the TV screen went completely red. It was so bright that our eyes started hurting. I managed to keep them open for a few seconds, and I thought I saw something, but before I knew it, the TV also turned off. "Did you see that? It looked like a face in the TV," I told the 2. "See what? That brightness was turned up to 1000. Liam, you better get rid of that stupid TV," Jackson replied. The console then started all on its own, and we started playing. As I was winning, the controller began to feel hot. I noticed it, but I just assumed that I'm imagining things. Another 5 minutes passed, and it started to smell like something was burning. "Ah!" I said while dropping the controller. "Liam, your controller is on fire. What's wrong with your electronics?" I said. He picked it up and dropped it on the floor 1 second later. As we were trying to figure out why it was overheating, we heard his mom on the other side of the door saying that it's almost midnight and they'll all go into the backyard. "It's midnight already? Leave this piece of plastic. We'll deal with it later," Liam said, and we all headed toward the door. But it was locked. We pulled on the doorknob as hard as we could. It didn't open. He then went towards the window, trying to tell everyone that the door was locked and we couldn't get out. But as soon as he approached the window, it closed all on its own, nearly closing on his neck on the way down. Liam took a few steps back. The lights began to flicker. We were all freaking out. A soft murmur could be heard all around the room. It seemed that the sound was coming from everywhere. "What's happening, guys?" I asked them, but they were as confused as me. The murmur got louder and louder until we could understand what it was saying. "Why didn't you stop? Why didn't you stop? Why didn't you stop? Why didn't you stop?" Suddenly, it got so loud, it covered our ears. The repeating phrase was digging in our brains. Jackson started to scream, but it was no match for the voice that was asking us why we didn't stop. The light bulb broke into many pieces. One of them hit me in the face, and I started to bleed. The noise eventually stopped. We were relieved, and then there was silence. But of course, it didn't last long. That scream made us all lose our consciousness and faint. But before we did, I could see a man's shadow standing in the corner of the room. We woke up after 12 a.m. when his mom came into the room. "What happened?" Jackson said as he got up from the floor. The two of us followed. We had no explanation for what had happened. Since then, we think about it every New Year's Eve, and the question remains, did we hit a person that night when we were 17? It's no secret that I've always been a fan of the supernatural. I've always watched supernatural-themed shows, movies, and documentaries. I know that some of you may think it's all fiction, but trust me, what happened to me the last time I went to the movies scared me for the rest of my life, literally. It happened about 3 months ago. Me and Mandy, my best friend, were kind of out of options as to what to do on the weekend. The weather wasn't exactly on our side either. It was raining, and the clouded sky made us want to sleep all day. "So, how about we go to a movie?" she asked me as I was sitting on the living room chair scrolling on my phone. "Hey, Beth, did you hear me?" she continued. Yeah, sorry, I was just reading something. A movie? Sure. What movies are playing at the theater today?" "Well, tell you what, let's go there and buy a ticket to the earliest screening so it can be a surprise to both of us," she told me. I liked the idea. That way, we wouldn't have to find reasons as to why we shouldn't watch this movie or that movie. Whichever started first, that's the one we were going to see. All set and done, we grabbed our jackets and ran to the car so that we wouldn't be exactly soaking wet when we got there. Fortunately, on the way to the movie theater, the rain stopped. "How lucky are we?" I said while my friend was behind the wheel. As we got there and parked the car, we noticed that the place looked almost deserted. We went inside, and at the ticket booth, we didn't see anyone. I started looking around, and so did my friend. "Can I help you?" A voice startled us. We looked around, but couldn't find the person that spoke to us. "Over here," she continued. We shifted our attention towards the ticket booth, and this time there was someone there, an old lady. She was very short, with gray hair and thick glasses. It seemed like she was over 80. "What can I do for you girls?" "Hello, we'd want 2 tickets to the next movie that's gonna play," my friend said. The woman gave us the tickets along with half a smile, and off we went to theater number 3. As we walked through the hallway, strangely, the place looked creepy. Some of the light bulbs were busted, and it was quite dark. "I hope this turns out to be a hell of a movie," I told Mandy. Finally, there we were, in front of Theater 3. As we stood in the doorway, we couldn't see anyone. "Are you freaking kidding me, Beth? We got the entire place to ourselves!" Mandy yelled as she ran by the seats. "Woohoo!" "Stop it! What if someone hears you?" I said, a little bit embarrassed. But it was cool though. We took any seat we wanted, and as soon as we did, the door slammed shut. It was pitch dark in there. A couple of commercials and movie trailers, nothing spectacular. But we still didn't know what movie we were gonna see. We didn't check the title on the ticket, so we were surprised. The movie started with a girl who managed to escape from a basement. It was nighttime, and she was running away from that area. "Kinda cliché until now," Mandy commented, while I agreed. I'm not going to tell you what happened next because it was not that eventful. Basically, it was a horror or crime movie, nothing special. After about an hour and a half, well, that's when things took a wrong turn. As we watched the movie, something strange appeared on the screen. It seemed like blood was spilling down from the top 2 corners. "That is weird, right?" I said. It seemed like those special effects were not following the theme of the movie. After about a couple of minutes, Mandy got up from her seat and started walking towards the screen. She told me that something seemed off. The blood that was dripping down looked way too realistic. She reached out her hand and touched the screen. I was patiently waiting for her to tell me something, but she remained with her back towards me and did not say a word. It looked like she was frozen. I got up from my seat and walked towards her. She looked at me and showed me her right hand. A drop of blood fell on my shoe. Both of us started to scream. The blood was real. Soon, half of the screen was covered in it. It started to leak onto the floor. We made a run for it, heading towards the exit. To our surprise, the door was locked. We started banging on it, screaming at the top of our lungs. "Let us out! Unlock this door right now!" As we were trying to escape, the movie stopped. The screen went black, and since that was the only source of light inside the theater, we couldn't see anything. We took out our phones and turned on the flashlight. The blood was continuing to drip, and at that point, it reached the front seats. As we were looking around for a way out, we started hearing whispers. Those whispers quickly turned into screams. "Help! Please! I have a family! You cannot do this!" The screams seemed so real. It was like the people were there with us. All of a sudden, we noticed someone in one of the seats. I ran towards the person holding my flashlight in front of me, but as I reached the seat, I noticed that he was dead. It was a man who was shot in the head, blood gushing on his face. I looked at Mandy. She was petrified. "Look! There's a dead woman in the corner!" I looked in that direction, and where she was, a woman was lying on the floor, having multiple shot wounds all across her body. The voices became louder and louder, and we were banging on the door until our knuckles bled. Finally, I don't know how, but it opened. We ran away and quickly hopped into our car. From there, we called the cops. As they arrived, we told them about the people in the theater. "Are you trying to play a prank on us? What do you mean you went to see a movie? That theater has been out of operation for a year now. A massive shooting took place there and 5 people were killed." We were shocked. When we got home, we researched what he said, and he was right. Everything he told us was true. We could never come to terms with what had happened that day. Did we see the ghosts of the people who lost their lives there? And who was that old woman?
The world was just getting better for me. I had spent years in the asylum, and it felt good to be back home with my parents. I watched as my mother cried in the arms of my father, her eyes falling back on me occasionally as I stood in the center of the room. "Liana," she said as she stood up, walking towards me. As a child, they tried to provide me with everything I needed. One thing that I wasn't allowed to have was a friend. So I made up friends in my head. My best friend was Maya, and she was always with me. One day, when I was outside, I got lost. I couldn't remember exactly what happened after that, but I knew that Maya kept me company. After I got rescued, I spent more time with Maya. I refused to go anywhere without her. Maya was glad to come out with me and didn't like it when I spent time with anyone else. So I kept to myself and stayed with Maya. My parents were advised that I should be taken to the psychiatric home, where they discovered I had split personality. I kept trying to explain to them that Maya was real, but every time I tried to call her, she refused to come out. She would come to me later when I was alone in my room and tell me that she was scared that they were trying to take her away from me. I stayed in the asylum for a long time before they declared that I was fine. I didn't see Maya again. Here I was, after 4 years, standing in front of my parents and hoping they see that I was better. What I had was a defect anyway. That is what they called it. My mother's hug, as I have known, was enough to crush one's bones, but this hug at this very moment was comforting. I was glad to be back home. I opened my eyes to see my father wiping his tears. It was the first time I saw him cry. I missed him so much. "I prepared your favorite," my mother said. Immediately she dropped the hug. Her hands cupped my cheeks. I smiled. I was out of words. I remember the way I was annoyed when they had told me where I was going. It broke them too, but I didn't see it at the time. Love would still be love, but they loved me despite who I was, and that was all that mattered. Later that night, people came around to welcome me back home, those I should have gone to high school with. I was 14 when I saw the first therapist, and I was 15 when I was asked to be admitted into the asylum. Out of all who came to welcome me, a face stood out. She was about my age but taller with a slim stature. She stared at me intensely before walking up to me. "I am Maya," she said and turned back. "What?" She looked at me and smiled at me. I smiled at her, even though she didn't see it before walking back into my room. Was she the same Maya? Where have you been? I asked, looking at her now. I saw that she's the one. She looked older than she used to, which was expected. It's quite complicated. She walked into my room. I wanted to ask how she knew where my room was, but it's been such a long time and I didn't realize that I missed her. What do you mean? I asked. You just stopped showing up. I told you, those people kept me away from you, she said, her eyes filling with sadness. I sighed. I've moved on, Maya. I think we should stay away from each other. I didn't want to go back to the asylum. She moved towards me with such speed that I didn't have time to react before her hand came up. The sharp metal which pierced my skin brought me back to reality. Her eyes were red from anger. The knife in her hand caused blood to form on my skin, but she didn't seem to care. She pushed me against the wall. I didn't quite understand why she was angry or what I did, but I begged and begged, but she didn't listen. The knife stayed in my skin, my blood gushing out like it was water. I'll kill us both, then we can be together. The handle of the door which moved caused her to rush out the back the way she came in. I slipped to the ground and my mother's arm caught me, tears forming in her eyes. Liana! John! She called my father and in a flash he rushed in, shocked at the sight. What happened? Who did this? My dad asked. I tried to talk, but the only thing which moved were my eyelids. I got dizzy, and mother calling my name was the last thing I heard. I woke up to the sound of machines and the beats of my heart, which felt like it was in my mouth. I felt someone's hands on me. It was comforting, and only one person could give such comfort, my mom. I was not happy at the kind of trouble I gave her. The wrinkles on her face made her older than she actually was. I opened my eyes and I almost jumped out of bed. It wasn't my mom. It was Maya. Her eyes were as red as they were yesterday night. This time, she looked angrier. You should have just let things end yesterday night. I don't even know what I did to deserve what you're doing to me, Maya. She laughed and said I was the only reason she was still there. If I was gone, then she would have peace. She asked if I knew what it felt like not to be able to talk to the only person she cared about. I'm sorry, Maya. That was the only thing I could say. I was too weak to fight back. The quick opening of the door turned my attention away from Maya, and by the time I turned back to her, she was gone. Mom, Dad, I called as my mom came to sit beside me, examining my body like she was the doctor. Who were you talking to? Dad asked. Maya, I choked out. She was the one who stabbed me. I thought I'd never see her again. My mom started crying and my dad went to hug her. I wondered why they were looking so sad. The door opened again and I saw the nurses from the asylum. No, I yelled, struggling against them when they came to pick me up. They said I was the one that stabbed myself. I argued with them that it was Maya, but they said no one has ever seen her. I cried, not just because of what Maya did, but because of who I was, the girl with crazy imaginations that needed help and safety. And if Maya came to see me again, I'll make sure to kill her first.